understand something. The Democrats just think that they're entitled to the Latino vote. They think that we just have to hand it over to them.
Black lives do matter, of course they do. But we know that the Black Lives Matter movement, capital BLM, is political.
It's nearly here. It's nearly election night. Will you be up all night? I know I am. I always stay up for election night in America. Not that I'm American. And I can remember every single one clearly from, I think, 2000. Wasn't that when George Bush defeated, what was he called? Al Gore, that was it. And then 2004, he won again. He got his second term. And then 2008, along came Obama, and we were all very, very excited about that. It's hard to get excited about this one. But who do you think will win? Trump is way behind in the polls, but apparently he's not far enough behind in some swing states. So, you know, it's not over yet. Don't count your chickens yet, Sleepy Joe. And we're going to hear from Jorge Masvidal, the UFC champion with the BMF belt. He's of a Latino background, and typically the Latinos tend to vote one particular way. He's saying that should be no foregone conclusion. Let's have a little listen to what he says, and then we can analyze it afterwards. Let's have a look.
The Democrats just think that they're entitled to the Latino vote. They think that we just have to hand it over to them. That's right. We sure as hell don't. Así mismo. Así mismo. They got to show us what they can do for us, what they can do for our communities. We're not going to buy the same wolf tickets and false promises that destroyed great countries like Venezuela and Cuba. It's not going to happen. You know what else is not going to work for them? Playing Despacito on your cell phone to pander to us. Hell no. You got to give us some credit for having heads on our shoulders. I'm going to wrap this up with some words of Barack Obama. He said elections have consequences. That is true. And those words have never been more true than they are today. We either re-elect President Trump and keep America great. Amen. Or we let Joe Biden destroy the greatest country the world has ever seen. Now, I'm a professional athlete, and I've been one for most of my life, so I've always seen things through a sports lens. That makes Donald Trump our head coach. And before the global pandemic, we were winning Super Bowls. And when you're winning Super Bowls, you don't fire the coach. Doesn't matter if you don't like the plays he runs, the players he puts on the field, or what he says on Twitter. You sure as hell don't replace him for another coach that's been in the business for 47 years at every level and never won a game.
Right, that's Jorge Masvidal showing his support for Donald Trump. And one of the mistakes we can make when looking at the Latino population, as he mentioned, is to imagine that they are one homogeneous, unified group. Now, I didn't know Jorge Masvidal's background, and sometimes we tend to think that the Mexicans are the largest ethnic group within the Hispanic community, and you can end up sort of wrongly assuming or using the terms interchangeably. I thought Jorge Masvidal was of a Mexican background. He's not. His father was from Cuba, and within the Latino community, very often the Cubans vote Republican, they vote on the right, because they are the Cubans that fled some form of socialism or some form of communism under Fidel Castro. And it's almost comparable to the Iranians that you find outside of Iran will be very critical of the regime in Iran, just as the Cubans you find outside Cuba will be very critical of the regime in Cuba because they left the country. They didn't like it. And the ones who did like it stayed. And very often people will tell you it was the rich, well-off Cubans that fled when the socialist revolution that happened there started divvying up the money and giving people a much fairer slice of the wealth, giving the workers a fairer slice of the wealth in Cuba. So that sort of explains it to me. Why would Jorge Masvidal, an ethnic minority, a person of colour, be campaigning for Trump, who is apparently this racist, toxic masculinity white male? I had someone posing the question on Facebook today: how could the following persons of colour be voting for Trump? And they reeled off some black celebrities. I think Kanye West was mentioned. We know he's a Trump supporter. Also 50 Cent. The common denominator of all these millionaires is that they will end up paying more tax on their millions of dollars, millions of their excess wealth. I mean, how many millions do you need? I can't remember the exact quote, but was it Arnold Schwarzenegger who said, what can you do with 100 million that you can't do with 50? Who really needs that much excess wealth? So whether black or white, it's not a surprise that multi-millionaires will not be voting for an increase in tax, an increase on the very, very wealthy. Did Biden say it was on people earning over 400,000 a year? I mean, who needs quite that much? If you want to get involved, by the way, 07491 751 203. I have opened the phone lines again. Haven't done that for a while. So if you want to have your say on the American election or anything else that's going on in the world or in your life, just give me a shout. But I am keeping a close eye on the election. I'll be staying up all night. We'll do some kind of all-night coverage as best we can. Maybe we'll do some international calls, maybe even speak to some American politicians. That would be good, wouldn't it? Who's your favourite American president of all time, dead or living? Most of them are dead, obviously, and it's hard to pick. And astonishingly, we've said it before, Donald Trump is the first American president in a very long time that has not started any new wars. He's finished some off. He's pulling troops out of Afghanistan at long last, and he did continue some of the war in Syria, but he hasn't actually started any new wars, and that's a strange thing for an American president. And he's been different. I feel like we're saying goodbye to Donald Trump. Should we write him off just yet? I feel like the writing's on the wall. But let's see who this is, and let's see if they're saying goodbye or hello to 4 more years. Hello, caller. You're through to Lessons for Life.
Hello, this is the Turk.
Hello, Turk. Welcome.
Thank you. You asked a question about who is my favorite president. I would say Donald J. Trump.
Really?
The 45th president of the United States history. He was my favorite president.
The current and reigning champion. In the chat, we've got Abraham Lincoln. Now, funny enough, Donald Trump compared himself to Abraham Lincoln recently and said that no one had done more for black people than him, apart from maybe Abraham Lincoln, who abolished slavery. But you're putting Trump ahead even of Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
Why,
because
though?
Donald Trump has done Because Donald Trump has done way more for black people. Abraham Lincoln only freed the slaves, and he only freed the slaves due to economical reasons for the North to win the Civil War rather than him loving black people.
He said he wanted to preserve the Union, didn't he?
Exactly. He wanted to preserve the northern states and destroy the South states because they would have no labor.
Now, do you think Donald Trump has done whatever he has done for the black people, and maybe you can tell us, out of love, or is it again just for self-benefit? And he almost said, "Vote for me, you've got nothing to lose." That's not much of an advert, is it?
Yes, I believe he loves black people. That's why he does so much for them, like giving them the platinum plan because they love platinum.
What's the platinum plan?
I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but I know he has a platinum plan.
Okay.
And the historical black colleges, he gave them they gave him like $80 billion for 10 years. So, he's doing good for the black people.
And do you think...
Because Barack Hussein Obama, the fallen messiah, has not helped black people one bit.
Well, his deputy president, Sleepy Joe Biden, is on the ticket. Do you think the black Americans will come out in favour of him, or do you think there's a shock coming? Because everyone's expecting Biden to win now. He's hot favourite.
No. Biden's not going to win. The blacks are going to do the right choice, choose Donald J. Trump, and he's going to get a black vote. All
right. Well, you heard it here first. You heard it from the Turk. Appreciate you calling, Turk. I'm glad we opened the phone lines up again. It's good to get you on.
Yeah, no problem.
Nice one.
I didn't get a notification again thanks to YouTube, but that's okay.
That's the Al Gore rhythm. See what I did there?
Yes.
Thank you, Turk. We'll catch you again.
You're welcome.
Nice one.
Yeah.
All right, so that's one vote already. That's the Turk, and I imagine he's already cast his vote via post. Bill Fence is saying regarding the greatest presidents of all time, all the good ones were assassinated. Abraham Lincoln tried to make America free from usury, and James Johnson is alleging that Trump loves no one but himself and his slimy family. Well, you've got to put family first, haven't you? And I think he wins the election but loses the popular vote again. And that's the interesting thing about politics. You can lose the popular vote, yet win the presidency. And that relies on winning these swing states. And because Joe Biden is not as far ahead as he might like to be in certain swing states, it's not in the bag yet. But someone did say to me earlier on, how the hell in all of the United States of America are these two the only two that Americans have got to choose from? And I think 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton was put in front of Donald Trump as the only option that couldn't beat him. I am sure that Bernie Sanders, feel the burn, would have appealed to the people, or enough of the people that went for Trump because they were desperate for a break from the norm, a break from mainstream politics, that he could have clinched it. But it didn't happen, and it's a strange process. And you had another, Jeb Bush was in the running for the Republican candidacy, and Overkill's got a good, no, that's Owen. Thank you, Owen. What about Hunter Biden's laptop? Well, tell me about the laptop, because that wasn't, I think, allowed to be mentioned in the debate. And should the behaviour of a family member reflect on an individual? Should we judge Hillary Clinton on the behaviour of Bill Clinton? Is that fair? I did not have sexual relations. Should you judge George W. Bush according to his father, George Sr.? Well, when the family member comes to try and finish off the job that their dad started, maybe you should. So tell me about the laptop. If it's not going to get us censored off the interweb, I know they control what you could say in the debate. Apparently, in the final debate, foreign policy was off the table. And Bill Fence is saying that was a good impression. Well, thank you very much. Maybe we'll get the real one on the phone someday. And maybe a populace should be voting based on domestic issues, but with the world superpower like America that has so much knock-on effect in the world, and the way that we focus on the election as if American politics is world politics, I almost think that we should have a vote, or at least half a vote. They get a vote in Puerto Rico, don't they? Is that the 51st state? I feel like we're the 51st state sometimes. Owen Keeling is saying, well, supposedly the whole Biden family is in the pocket of this Chinese business due to being blackmailed or Epsteined by them. Yeah, there's no doubt that what went on Epstein Island wasn't just child abuse in and of itself, although that was certainly an issue, but it was so that you can blackmail these people. And millionaires or billionaires, they cannot be bought because, as I said, what can you do with 100 million that you can't do with 50? You cannot buy these people. All you can do is threaten them. So you put them in a compromising position with underage girls and secretly film them without going into details, and then you've got them. Then you can influence them. And the names that are coming up from that island, well, we don't know all the names yet. I wonder what more is to come out. Owen Keeling saying the laptop was given to the FBI by Rudy Giuliani. This is the former mayor of New York, who is alleging, although the camera never lies, he was caught on camera doing something rather untoward. And he's saying that is, as Trump would call it, fake news. Mayor Giuliani. And James Johnson saying, did you watch the Netflix documentary about Jared Kushner? That shows how horrid they are. Not yet, but that's interesting. If it's on Netflix, it's out there in the mainstream. And sometimes you feel like everything is so censored. Even what I'm saying now is going to be censored. Even I am choosing my words carefully. Where do we go to get the truth? Someone made the point on here the other day, the internet's not like it used to be. You used to be able to find all sorts of things, and there was and still is a hell of a lot of disinformation, and that just muddies the water, doesn't it? And I could mention documentaries such as Loose Change. Bill Fence is asking, where is it going? And that's a good question. Owen Keeling is saying, names redacted from the newly released 400-plus page Ghislaine Maxwell deposition. Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, Bill Clinton. Yeah, Alan Dershowitz was making some strange arguments recently about the vaccine, to put another buzzword out there for the Al Gore rhythm. He seems to be very much in favour of mandatory vaccines, and he was saying that you would legally be able to plunge a syringe into, I can't do Alan Dershowitz, you could plunge a syringe into someone's arm if they refused a vaccine. What happened to my body, my choice? When does that go out the window? And Alan Dershowitz besmirched the name of the great Norman Finkelstein, gave him a hell of a problem, and he was a lawyer for some unsavoury characters as well, wasn't he? Alan Dershowitz. So Alan Dershowitz's name has come up on the Epstein Island. God, Prince Andrew there. It's who knows who else was on that island, but they've all been powerful people, haven't they? And Ghislaine Maxwell was asked several times whether she remembered flying to the island with Bill Clinton, and she was saying, I don't remember. And that's a great cop-out, isn't it? A way of not lying is to say, oh, I don't remember. Because it's not a crime to be forgetful, but it is a crime to deliberately lie and commit perjury. But I think if you sat on a plane with Bill Clinton, I think you'd... I'm tempted to do it again. I think I'd remember if I sat next to... I know I did. Yeah, I flew to Belfast once and Bill Clinton was in the seat next to me. Brilliant. Couldn't make it up. Let's have a look at something from the UK Parliament just to mix it up and cater to our British audience. I know we're a transatlantic show, but let's have a look what they are teaching in the schools in the UK. Owen Keeling's adding, she said that on GM on the flight log, and the flight log isn't there. Yeah, she tried to say, oh, look at the flight logs, but they were not there. Bit like when the CCTV cameras weren't working on certain days, or there's only stills. There are a lot of famous incidents where you think you would have footage of it, but you just get a still image. And I was thinking lately, will it become much more difficult to stage certain events now that everyone has got a camera on them? And we're the first generation now that will always have a camera everywhere, a camera phone. You don't call it a camera phone anymore, just every phone has a camera. And a mate of mine today was actually reminiscing about a time that he and I had an exhibition boxing match to commemorate some local history. And we were wishing that we had footage of it. We were probably swinging like windmills in my early days of the Marquess of the Queensberry. But yeah, if anything like that happened today, it would all be on camera. And if anything like what happened in New York 19 years ago and a month happened today, we would have much more footage, and all the crazy conspiracy theories that are trying to muddy the water could be done away with. Matt Harvey saying, France, the fascist liberal state, recently passed a law banning Arabic and Turkish in schools under their battle against Islamic separatism. France is an atheist fascist state. That's interesting. I wonder why they're banning Turkish as well as Arabic. And why would that be anything to do with being secular? I can understand, well, not that I'm saying it's a good thing, but Arabic is seen as a holy language for the Muslims, so you might say you shouldn't teach that here in secular France. What's wrong with Turkish? Turkey was a secular country for a very long time, but the world is turning away from secularism, isn't it? Even the Soviet Union that was secular by force for 100 years, the people there are turning back to the Eastern Orthodox Church, and the people in the Muslim parts of that world are turning towards Islam. And Matt Harvey saying France isn't a secular state like America. I suppose it's different, isn't it? But both of these revolutions, the French Revolution and the American Revolution, came away from it thinking we need to separate the church and state. A lot of the Pilgrim Fathers were Christians, of course, that fled religious persecution. And you can understand why they wanted to set up a country that would separate church and state so that religions couldn't inflict their ideology on others, but they still talk about God, don't they? So it's a spiritual country. God bless America, and all of that. So it's not atheistic like the Soviet Union seemed to be. I mean, the Marxists believe Marx when he said religion is the opiate of the masses. So they wanted to ban religion and ban all religion. And I often wondered why Islam was a victim of that. I don't know how aware Karl Marx was of Islam. If Marx felt that the church was making the rich richer and the poor poorer, or keeping the poor poor. If you remember the hymn in school that we used to sing, the rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate, God ordered their estate, something like that. You can understand how Christianity could be seen as keeping the status quo and keeping the rich rich and the poor poor, but Islam tries to give money from the rich to the poor, doesn't it? Isn't it the real Robin Hood religion, zakat, where you have to give a certain amount of your excess wealth, not your wealth, your excess wealth that you don't need, whereas the tax system just takes a large chunk of your money, whether you're rich or poor. It taxes your earnings rather than your profit. But we've got a caller, so let's see who's there. Hello, caller. Who's this? Oh no, we can't hear them. Caller, you are mute for some reason. Send me a voice note if you can and we'll play it. Ah, that's a shame. That's someone trying to call us possibly long distance. Yeah, so France isn't secular. Turkey for a long time was secular with the Young Turks revolution and Kemal Ataturk, who tore down the Ottoman Empire, but then very, very quickly Turkey revert to Islam, as have many places. Bill Fence is saying the tax man takes your money and gives some of that to charities. Yeah, well, that's nice of him. But then again, there's some charities that fiddle their taxes, aren't there? Matt Harvey saying separating church and state is fine, but that shouldn't mean France and the left has the right to impose its type of speech on others in schools. Well, let's hear from the UK Parliament. Conservative MP spoke out today. Let's see what was said.
The teaching of contested political ideas as if they are accepted facts. We don't do this with communism, we don't do this with socialism, we don't do it with capitalism. And I want to speak about a dangerous trend in race relations that has come far too close to home to my life. And it is the promotion of critical race theory, an ideology that sees my blackness as victimhood and their whiteness as oppression. I want to be absolutely clear. This government stands unequivocally against critical race theory. Some schools have decided to openly support the anti-capitalist Black Lives Matter group, often fully aware that they have a statutory duty to be politically impartial. Black lives do matter, of course they do, but we know that the Black Lives Matter movement, capital BLM, is political. I know this because at the height of the protest, I've been told of white Black Lives Matter protesters calling, and I'm afraid I apologize for saying this word, calling a black armed police officer guarding Downing Street a That is why we do not endorse that movement on this side of the House. It is a political movement, and what would be nice would be for members on the opposite side to condemn many of the actions that we see this political movement, instead of pretending that it is a completely wholesome anti-racist organization. There is a lot of pernicious stuff that is being pushed, and we stand against that. We do not want to see teachers teaching their white pupils about white privilege and inherited racial guilt. And let me be clear, any school which teaches these elements of critical race theory as fact, or which promotes partisan political views such as defunding the police without offering a balanced treatment of opposing views, is breaking the law.
Right, well, that's alarming that a holier-than-thou white liberal would call that black lady a pet N-word. And some of the racism from this new wave of the left is quite disgusting. And at the protests recently in America, where several people ended up unfortunately killed, there were white Antifa types hurling abuse at black people and using the N-word. It's almost as if, and I wonder how, I mean, everyone's going to feel different, aren't they? But I think I would feel uncomfortable as a black person if someone white felt they could commandeer the N-word because they were on the right side. And it's sort of like going around in, it's a vicious circle, isn't it? I think maybe this whole new anti-racist left movement might be just as, it's a new racism in another form. And you do find that they agree with a lot of the things the old-fashioned racists say. They're into segregation and having safe spaces for people of colour only, and separating white people as being other, having white privilege. I mean, that sounds very racist to me. And for a so-called liberal anti-racist to use the term as if he somehow owns it because he's bought into this new fashionable ideology, I think that's pretty offensive. And 33X is saying, what is her problem? Pet is a term of endearment. They use the N-word towards each other all day. Yeah, no, but I think the idea of calling someone a pet N-word, it's like calling them an Uncle Tom and saying, well, you're somehow a sellout. But who is a white liberal to tell any black person how to think or behave? Absolutely unbelievable. And Matt Harvey saying that would be like Catholics imposing Catholic speech in schools to Protestant kids and then claiming to be a free secular country. Yeah. Well, I didn't really hear of critical race theory being taught as a subject in schools in the UK. And I don't think it's like an option you take or something you study in and of itself, but it might well be a prism through which other subjects, other topics, Black History Month perhaps being one of them, are taught. And this Member of Parliament was saying she felt uncomfortable with a doctrine that states categorically white people are privileged and she is therefore oppressed. Now, there might be a pattern whereby, of course, because of slavery, because of discrimination, there are patterns of privilege, of advantage. I've said before, there's an advantage to being a majority, but to tell someone you are underprivileged, you are oppressed merely because of the fact that you have black skin, I can understand why that would be offensive. And that these binary ways of thinking, labels, you're either white or person of colour, you're either black or you're not. I mean, black comes in many, many shades, doesn't it? And the experience of a black person of a Caribbean background in the United Kingdom might be totally different to the experience of a black person of an African background, a male black person, a white, a female black person. We've got another call. I hope this one goes through. Hello, caller. Are you hearing us?
Hello, can you hear me?
We're hearing you now. Who's there?
I'm calling from Pakistan.
And what's your name, sir?
Hello? I'd rather not give my name if that's okay.
Okay, it's Mr. Anonymous from Pakistan. What have you got to say on the matters we've been discussing?
I was listening to your show before I get onto this topic, what you're talking about now. I wanted to say that yesterday on your show, you had a Scottish man and I think some Asian type person,
Yeah,
and he said
we get a lot of those. Thanks for calling.
He posed the question that what has Trump done when the Scottish man said that Trump is dangerous, and the Asian person said that name me 3 things that Trump has done which are dangerous, and he wasn't able to really.
Are you going to name them for us? Okay, I remember. Yes. Okay, you're going to give us 3 things that Trump did that were dangerous because we missed it on the show yesterday. Go ahead. Number 1.
Calling Mexicans drug dealers and rapists, saying that Muslims should, until we know what the heck is going on. But what he should have said is we should stop extreme people and then find out what's going on.
Right.
He changed the capital for
That is 3 things that Trump did that were bad, and we appreciate that call from Pakistan. In the chat, I've got Athari Ashari Maturidi saying, hello, I'd beg to differ and say Turkey is more secular and better than France. And President Erdogan is an Islamic leader, but Turkey is mostly secular and better than France. I definitely think Turkey is more on a par with France when it comes to racism and the terribly racist way in which they treat the Muslim majority Kurdish population of that region. Never mind the Christian population, who are all but gone because of the devastating ethnic cleansing that Turkish nationalism and Ottoman Islamism did in the region. And James Johnson is asking, is there white privilege on J. Wick estate? Well, James, you'd have to tell me where the J. Wick estate is. And Athari Ashari Maturidi is coming back at me. He's saying, racism, I'm half Kurdish, as you can tell from his flag in the picture. I'm better off in Turkey than a brown Muslim in atheist France. Well, that's good. And maybe you like Turkey because it is Islamist, and Erdogan is portraying himself as some kind of new sultan. He wants to bring back the Ottoman Empire, and if the Ottoman Empire truly was Islamic, I suppose it wouldn't matter whether you were a Kurdish Muslim or a Turkish Muslim or half and half, as you describe yourself, as long as you're a Muslim. But this is the thing about empire, isn't it? It inflicts itself on other people, it conquers other lands, and it then treats those people as second-class citizens. And we made the comparisons before about occupying parts of other people's countries and transferring your civilian population into their land, as was done in northern Cyprus, which is a war crime. But we've got another comment from the same individual. In France, you get criminalised for the Armenian genocide, whilst the hypocritical nation of France hasn't even passed a law recognising Algerian genocide. Right, so France and Turkey are similar then, aren't they? Countries don't tend to like to fess up to their terrible atrocities in the past. Britain is coming round to it. People like Jeremy Corbyn were suggesting that we should tell the whole truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth about Britain's past, the good things and the bad things that the British Empire did. And there is good and bad in everything. There is good that the Ottoman Empire did. There is also bad. Let's hold our hands up. Let's not necessarily accuse the other side. Let's look within and say, what has my country done wrong? Apparently in Turkey you don't get criminalised for accepting Armenian genocide. That's good. That's good. Let's fess up to it. And in France, you get criminalised for denying Armenian genocide and even fines for it. That's against free speech. France closes mosques, and Turkey, Erdogan built churches. Where did churches get built in Turkey under Erdogan? I'd love to know, because he has been busy turning buildings that were churches into mosques and opening them up again when they could have been at least historical museums for everybody. James Johnson, picking up on a comment earlier, Jaywick is an estate on the Essex coast and is the most deprived place in the UK. And that is a point that related earlier to white privilege. And this is the problem with the short-sightedness of just screaming white privilege and you're a white male all the time. You then end up in these shouting matches where you're trying to prove that there are instances when it's not advantageous to be white. When you're poor on the estate that this gentleman mentioned, the Jaywick estate, it's not going to matter whether you're black or white. You're going to be deprived because you're poor. And James Johnson is estimating that it's 98% white. Yes, and the ethnic group, ethno-demographic group underperforming in British schools at the moment is the white working class boy. They are not benefiting from this supposed white privilege. So yeah, it is very short-sighted and often stifling to constantly talk in these mantras and these black and white language, and we can talk about light switch thinking. It's either on or off, yes or no. You're either black or white, when in truth we're all somewhere on that spectrum, aren't we? And in America, someone shared recently some data showing you the various different non-white ethnic groups who are on average better off than the white population. So yes, the white majority population, as have been historically in the United States, have had advantages over the black population, who are descendants of slaves, and this legacy of slavery, I'm sure, has held back the black population. And the Hispanic population, or Latino, I know those terms are not interchangeable, but let's use Latino, Latinx, male and women, would seem to lie somewhere financially in between the black population and the white population. But Asian immigrants to the United States of America, the land of the free, seem to be achieving the American dream and seem to be better off than the native white population. But interestingly, I saw a clip of Jordan Peterson, here comes another impression, recently, who was saying that this benefit, this advantage that the immigrant population have, and these arrivals from Asia, from India, who are not white, who do not have white privilege, they arrive with some kind of advantage and they are better off and more well off than the white majority population. But after a generation or two, that trails off and they lose that advantage. So I wonder, is there something about the type of people and the mindset that you have when you embark on a journey, when you make hijrah, as they would call it in